Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
I'm George Luna.
I'm Brittany Pacheco.
My virtue hasn't been sullied.
King of the North, Tristan Jones.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement.
Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. We are here today to discuss Season 1, Episode 4 of House of the Dragon, episode titled King of the Narrow Sea. Before we go through all the plot points and hit all the high notes in this episode, let's go around the room real quick and get everybody's overall thoughts on the episode. George, what do you think about King of the Narrow Sea?
I didn't get to talk to y'all last time about the last episode, but I feel like every episode is getting better and better, and this one definitely did too. Overall, the show's solid. I'm loving it. I want to hear more from you guys because y'all know a lot more about this stuff than I do because I have a lot of questions. So, but solid episode.
Brittany, what are your overall thoughts?
Last week, I said I didn't have a favorite episode. I think this episode is now my favorite, not because of the stuff that really went down, but just the shock and awe of it all. And because of last week's episode, I decided to go ahead and start reading Fire and Blood. I am actually now caught up to the point where we are in talking about today's episode. So I'm not quite where Frank and Tristan are, but I'm catching up. By next week, I'll probably be done with the book, just saying. But overall, this episode was woof. That's all I have to say. Frank.
I mean, I was flying in from out of town. Tristan and I both were, and I had to refrain myself by saying, "Nigga, what the fuck?" Like, I was about to go ham on the plane, dog. Like the brothel scene, Daemon, fucking Viserys and Damon's exchange, Renera and Kristen Cole's exchange. Like it was just a great episode of just great one-on-one exchanges between great actors and actresses, man. It's just getting better, dog. I love it.
So we were on the plane. I watched the episode first on because I downloaded it on my iPad. At a certain point, I paused and I reached in front of me to Frank, who was in the row in front, and I was just like, "Hey, this is the best episode of the season." And then I looked, and there was still 30 minutes left, right? So that lets you know what I think about this episode. I think it was my favorite episode. Like Frank said, the dialogue was superb. Like every single scene was just excellent, A+ dialogue. Hands down, my favorite episode of the season so far.
Yeah, it was a great one, and that's something about Game of Thrones I've noticed also in this series specifically is that you're right. Like you're watching it, you're like, man, a lot has happened, and then usually like there's like 30 minutes left or 20 minutes left. It's they get so much into an episode. I mean, each episode's about an hour or more anyway, but they pack each episode a lot of storylines, a lot of characters, and just a great show. This episode started. We have another time jump with this episode. I think we started about a year after episode 3. Is that what y'all kind of understood? Because Allison no longer is pregnant. She's got looks like a baby daughter based on like the bonnet that she had on her head.
Helena.
Yeah. Okay. That's the name. Okay. And Rhaenyra is on this like world tour of Westeros looking for a suitor. She's like her traveling bachelorette tour. What did y'all think about the opening scene? George, what did you think about seeing her, pursued by a 70-year-old guy and then by like a 10-year-old kid?
Dude, that kid was a savage, man. I was like, bro, they better not fuck with him. They said something about him and his people or wherever he was from, and I was like, that guy talking shit's about to get killed. Next scene, just this kid. Can y'all tell me more about this tribe or wherever he was from?
The Blackwoods and the Brackens have been enemies for like years, bro. Like their beef goes back hundreds of years.
So the guy that was talking shit was from who?
He was a Bracken. The guy talking to the Bracken. The young kid was a Blackwood. The Blackwoods are in the Riverlands. They're like one of the few families that still like, from what I remember, one of the few families that still honor the old gods.
Okay.
The rest of people in the Riverlands pretty much honor the new gods, but they just been beefing for years, and so that's just a continued beef for eons.
Let me tell you how long they've been beefing. They've been beefing for over 1,000 years. Before Aegon the Conqueror, when he conquered Westeros, Brackens originally took his side, right? So he gifted them these hills in the Riverlands. And over the course, like there's just like nobody really knows like where the beef started, but like it's like Hatfield and McCoy levels, to the point where the Brackens won't listen to any history that was written by any maester that's employed by the Blackwoods, and vice versa. Like they fight over disputed lands, they fight over like everything. Honestly, like that's the beef. That's one of the longest-standing beefs in this entire story, if not the longest-standing beef in this story, outside of like Bravos and Valyria.
And they both come from the blood of the first men. Like that's how old this beef is.
Yeah,
I think there's a somewhere in the lineage there's like a cross connection of like relation. Like it's just they beef. If you're a Blackwood, you're Bracken, they beef. It doesn't matter if we used to be related back in the day. Like they just don't matter. They don't care.
love it.
Yeah, for that kid to, for one, to pursue the princess as a suitor and to be mocked by this rival and still continue. Listen, I have mad respect for that kid prior to, unsheathing his sword and defending his family and his family's honor and all that. Because even Rhaenyra was basically saying with Lord Dondarrion, this man's older than my father. Why is he asking for my hand? And now you're presenting to me this child. But then after she saw what transpired between these two families, she's like, I might actually I can get down with this kid. Like, it's okay. He can hold his own. And I have mad respect for that. Poor Rhaenyra, to have all these men come before her and just, and then she basically said, I'm done. After, what was it, 3 days, 3 weeks? This was supposed to go on for a couple of months. And she's like, no, we're going back home. Peace out. So it's great.
It looks like to me, like a lot of these houses that are vying for our hand in marriage, it looks like from the aesthetics, a lot of these people aren't even like heirs to their own house. They look like third or fourth in line. So like if you're Renera, it's like a slap in the face. Like I'm the Targaryen chick. Like I'm like the heir to the Seven Kingdoms, and you give me your third and fourth and fucking line. Like what the fuck?
Exactly.
So, maybe that's partly why she decided to cut it short, sail back to King's Landing. And as they're sailing back, we see Daemon fly over the ship, and you can tell that Rhaenyra seems pretty happy that her uncle is returning to King's Landing.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So Daemon he returns. He's got a new look, got a new haircut. He's got that like short hair, don't care kind of attitude, rocking. He's wearing a crown. He's calling himself the King of the Narrow Sea. He offers his brother the crab feeder's hammer. I love how he just like add it to the chair. He just drops it, and then he, basically offers his brother his crown. Says that there's only one true king, and he knows who it is, and the crown and the stepstones are are Viserys's to hold. Did y'all believe that he was, because it seemed like as he came back he was maybe a changed person? Did y'all think that he was changed in this moment, or do you think he was just like putting on this act?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no. This is the Daemon Targaryen show, and we're here for it. But the man is the puppeteer. I mean, he's pulling at everyone's strings, right? He's forcing them to play his game. And no. Also, it's not my original joke. Daemon short hair again or Daemon long hair again? Y'all out there, let us know which you prefer. I don't really care either way. I feel with the shorter hair, it looks more like Matt Smith than what a Targaryen would look like. But anyway, y'all leave your comments down below in the chat what you prefer.
What's crazy about that scene in the books is totally different. So there's actually in the books, there's actually a tourney going on, and Renera, Allison, Viserys are sitting at the top watching this tourney, and randomly Daemon Targaryen flies on his dragon Syraxis, lands in the middle of the tourney grounds, and offers the axe to Viserys. That's how it was in the book. So it kind of would have been kind of cool to see that play out in the show, because they've been pretty faithful to the storyline so far, as like the major scenes and things of that nature. But that's how it kind of went down in the books.
Yeah, I guess because there was a tourney in the first episode, they didn't want to do two tourneys in the first 4.
There are a lot of tourneys in Fire and Blood, and I think what Frank is referring to is like the 5th anniversary for Viserys and Allison. Like I said, I'm reading the book, so I'm now like caught up, so that's like fresh in my mind.
So, none of us were really fooled by Daemon's act, but it seems like Viserys was pretty happy to have his brother back. He's like talking to him like, "Oh, you were always our mother's favorite," and kind of carrying on with him. And it looked like he was actually kind of happy for one of the few times that we've seen him in this show. And then Rhaenyra, congratulates her uncle, and you can see there's a little bit of a twinkle in both their eyes. Like you can see at this point, I'm not a book reader. I'll probably never read the books, but even I could look at that and go, okay, something's going to happen with these two characters. I didn't realize how quickly it was going to happen, but something's going to happen. Then we get, pretty good, we begin to see Allison and Rhaenyra kind of repair their friendship. Brittany, what did you think about these two characters kind of coming back together for, based on the circumstances that they were, cast apart?
I think it's nice to see that even though for us it's just 4 episodes in, it's been many years between the time that Rhaenyra lost her mother to Allison's being Viserys' new wife and bringing in children. So for the fact that these women come together and kind of have like an understanding, and I mean, even Rhaenyra says something kind of cross, and it really struck Allison in such a way where the comment was the idea of being imprisoned in a castle and to squeeze out heirs. And the look on Allison's face is actually truly heartbreaking because she's in that very situation. She didn't ask for it. This is all choreographed by her father, but Rhaenyra then says sorry, which I wasn't really expecting her to say that, but for Allison to pretty much say to Rhaenyra, while you were on tour, I did miss you. It is good to have you home. And for Rhaenyra to come back and say, I've missed you too. And for me, it was like, it's a very nice moment between these two women, just because it's been tough. It's been tough the last 4 or 5 years for both of them. And this episode really shined a lot on the different issues that these women will face in this episode. And I actually really felt bad for Allison in this episode. Like it truly broke my heart.
Yeah, I mean, this episode you really see her life sucks. I mean, it's not great being the queen. I mean, at least not what we're seeing in the so far.
But that scene, that scene between Renera and Allison is also why I never believed like we needed to see like, Viserys and Allison wedding. We didn't need to see like the immediate fallout. But like if the dialogue is written well, like right. we can infer with some type of practicality, like what happened afterwards. Like we don't have to see those things. We can see the intent, what's the word I'm looking for? The tension really between both of them. We can see the tension between all three, between Rhaenyra, Allison, and Viserys. Like we can see how this tension has been playing out just by really about a few lines of dialogue. And I thought that scene was great because it not only showed that there's been some incremental acceptance of the reality of their situation in the 4 years that have passed, but also that scene also kind of illuminated the major theme of the episode, which one of the major themes, which is like this patriarchal system. And how everybody is just kind of doing their duty within this patriarchal system, right? And Rhaenyra and Allison have 2 different experiences within that system. Like obviously Rhaenyra gets a little bit more freedom than Allison. Allison has no freedom whatsoever, right? And I thought that scene was perfect because it hit so many different boxes at the same time.
Yeah, and, you talked about the stuff we talked about in the previous episode where so we didn't get to see those scenes, but they did in fact film those scenes of Alicent marrying the king and her kind of having to interact with Rhaenyra. Brittany, do you have those images?
Yes,
Okay.
I should have you right here. Here we go.
There we go. So these came out this week. This is like the immediately after Alicent hooked up with the king or is,
Announce that she'll marry him.
betrothed to the king or whatever. So there was that, and there was another couple images where they were like she was helping Rhaenyra's helping Alicent get ready for her wedding day. So
yeah, and I mean, it would have been stunning. I mean, she looked gorgeous for the wedding, of course, like this crown that we've got here on the screen, and then the dress. It looked super cool, in my opinion. I would have loved to have seen it just for the costume, but I agree with Tristan. Based on the dialogue that we have received in this episode and even the immediate episode after the announcement, it wasn't really needed to further the story. We kind of get the point.
And I agree. I would have loved to see it too. I hope they put it on like a behind the scenes or something like that. Like I feel like those, or at least throw it on YouTube or something like. It's a great thing to see because, like you said, Emily Carey looks stunning in that. Like that crown is amazing. Like
for sure,
lighting on that. Jeez.
Yes.
But, great to see, but like also it can be overcome with like just great dialogue makes up for so much.
Yeah, I mean it's understandable they didn't show it because of the time jumps, you can't show every single thing that's happening in the world of these characters. So the next big scene we get is Daemon and Rhaenyra. Daemon's flirting with her, and they're talking in Valyrian, right?
It's so seductive in a weird way. Because we've heard Valyrian being spoken before. We've heard it obviously with Daenerys. We heard it even with the king and the Dragon Keeper. But there's something about the way that Daemon and Rhaenyra talk to one another in Valyrian, and it just kind of drips seduction. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and in this conversation, Daemon kind of explains to her that, hey, like, marriage is just a political arrangement that, once you're married, you can do whatever you want to do. And she kind of counters with, well, that's only true for a man. That's not true for a woman. For a woman, it's like a death sentence because obviously your main job is to pop out kids. And then we see, Daemon kind of explains to her, hey, but if you're afraid or if you live in fear, you can't enjoy the things that you'd like to enjoy in life. And that tease kind of is what leads us to the next scene where Daemon, like, he leaves like a bag of clothes and a map in his in her room. George, what did you think about that scene? The fact that there's a secret passageway for her to get out of her room and to go on a night out in the town.
I think it was cool to see her explore this side of King's Landing that she's never really seen or experienced firsthand. So it was cool to see her perspective on it when they go to that play or whatever, like the stuff in the street or whatever. She's kind of like surprised that these people don't like her. Like you can see it in her face. And she just thinks that people will agree with stuff or like things that happen, but she's seeing like firsthand, like they don't fuck with her, like she's not a man. So they're not gonna respect her like they would a king or something like that. So it was cool to see to get that reality check for her.
And she's dressed like they said, a page. She supposedly looked like a boy.
Yeah.
And she even runs into somebody who calls her a boy, and that kind of surprises her. Then we lead on to the pleasure house, and in here we see, Daemon's trying to get with her, and it seems like for him it's like a game of control. Like he's trying to like shock her, but then he realizes that, it's not shocking her. She likes this. She wants this to go further. Then he cuts it short either by his own choice or because he isn't able to continue, which maybe Daemon has some kind of sexual problem because that's kind of been mentioned a couple times throughout the 4 episodes we've watched. Frank, what's your take on that?
I think the sexual frustration is more symbolizing his frustration with his position in the Seven Kingdoms. there are things that he wants that he just can't have. Whether it's Viserys shutting him down at every wake and turn, or whether it's Otto Hightower one upping him in the King's Council, or whether it's him not wanting his current wife in the Vale. I think the sexual issues and frustration is just symbolizes what he has going on. And I think once Targaryens, they rule, and everything is based from fear and control and power. And right now, with the minor win of the Stepstones, he hasn't really won as far as like any political positions and jockeying for power. So I think his power, his influence is directly tied to his dick and how he's able to gain influence. And I think that scene with Rhaenyra, for two reasons. I think he wasn't able to rise to the occasion because of what I said. Also, I think he's purposely trying to expose Rhaenyra and strengthen his position too. I think there's a little bit of envy on Rhaenyra being the chosen one for the throne, and if he can sully her name in a way, and he can come in and be the knight in shining armor and go back to old Targaryen traditions of being husband to multiple wives and furthering the blood of the dragon, I think it's a twofold thing with him, in my opinion.
Yeah. So do you think there's any desire for her at all, or is it just to mess with his brother and just kind of also a power play to kind of, get her hand in marriage and then become the king by that kind of end around way?
I think he cares about her. He genuinely cares about her. It's just that the way he cares is also tied to what he can get out of it as well. I mean, this is one thing about the show that the show has shown is that the misogynistic nature and patriarchy in play, if it's in your favor as a man and everything falls into place with the way things are in King's Landing and in the Seven Kingdoms, you're good. But if your power as a man is not being boasted and exhibited throughout your daily life and throughout what you want, then you see the toxic nature of him lashing out in different ways. In some ways it's subtle. In some ways it's very overt. And I think with Rhaenyra, it's somewhat overt of how he views her compared to him wanting to seek the throne and gain more power.
Yeah, it's a very complicated kind of situation. And then we see Rhaenyra makes her way back to after she's kind of spurned from Daemon. He just bolts, and she makes her way back to the castle. Then she encounters Sir Criston Cole, who's waiting at her door. He thinks that she's already inside of her room, and then that leads to another romantic encounter. See, we have this episode had like 3 main sex scenes, right? So we had Rhaenyra and Daemon, which not so much. We have Rhaenyra and Criston Cole, and then we have Viserys and Allison, which is probably the worst of the 3. Brittany, what's your take on the Criston Cole Rhaenyra encounter?
Listen, I get it. Okay, I get it. Damon got Rhaenyra all riled up, and she's bothered, and she's like, I need to, equally get this frustration out as well. And who better than someone that she's actually grown some sort of relationship with. But you see the torment all over Criston's face. He is a Kingsguard. He took the oath to be chaste and to not take a wife and not to father any children. And you see the conflict within himself to do this. He knows he's in between a rock and a hard place, and really both could equal death at this point, I'd imagine. What if, the Lord Commander found out what he did, especially with the princess, he's going to die. If he doesn't do it and she, goes out and tells stories, he's going to die. So might as well get some while you're at it, right? But I felt for him in many a way, just like I felt for Allison. But with the Criston Cole thing, they took great care in his armor. I will say that. You got to take that armor off very carefully. Make sure no one knows what's going on. But I think the Allison scene disturbed me more so than than Kristen. But throughout all of this, Justin, I was like this the entire time. I'm clutching my face. I know this is gonna make for a great thumbnail, right? I'm like horror struck. I was horror struck with Daemon and Rhaenyra, even though incest is like a big part of Targaryens. It's really who they are, but I still didn't necessarily want to see it unfold. And I think I was just more horrified with Alicent and Viserys. I want to hear Tristan's take on all of this because I know, like Frank, he's read the books. Tell us what we need to know.
Well, just forget the books. Like each one of those sex scenes demonstrates some level of power dynamics, right? We start with Rhaenyra and Daemon, right? He clearly has some type of authority in this pleasure house. These people know him. He has a reputation there. He's king of the street of silk or something like that. And he's guiding her, obviously, as her uncle, as the more experienced person. And then she leaves that and goes to Sir Kristen, where she has the power dynamic, right? Like she can boss him around. She can, insist that he drop his vows in order to satisfy her, in that moment, right? And then we also see the power dynamic between Allison and Viserys, where you can see Allison when the maid comes in and basically tells her that the king has summoned her. She understands what it is. It's late in the hour. She tells us it's the hour of the hour or some shit like that. And a girl is like, yeah, it sure is. So like, what time it is. Like, this is what it is. And the dread on her face before, during, it's just all about the power dynamics, where like so much of this show is about like your desires versus like your responsibility, right? Like I'm sure some part of Allison, like the non, religious, just completely docile nature. I'm sure there's a part of her who wants to trade places with Renera. I want to be wooed across to these different places, and I want to be able to choose my partner. I want to be able to fall in love, like just have a equanimity with with my partner, and she'll never get that. Right? She's literally sentenced in a way. What was funny when they first showed her with her back to the camera, and she's holding the baby, and she turns around, like the window literally looks like a cage, right? Like I don't think that was by accident. So like I think she longs for like this different life that she might have been able to have if she was a Targaryen, or if she was a princess, or if she was some common girl. But like she's Lady Allison of House Hightower, and she has always known she was going to be a political piece. She has always known that she was going to marry some high lord. I don't think she ever thought she'd be queen. And she's always known that this life was meant for her. But like being in it in the moment is so depressing, right? It's so depressing because she's confined to just pumping out kids to this older man who's weak, who she kind of has to semi-counsel. She's kind of like a second hand of the king, because he trusts her. But like the power dynamic ruins any type of warmth that they kind of developed before the marriage, before the betrothal. So I just felt really bad for her. Like she just not like she's just sitting there receiving like non-pleasurable sex, but she just has to sit there and take it, and also understand that sex is probably going to lead to another child. Like she has 4 children. Spoiler alert. So like she has several children, and obviously loveless marriage, and she can't explore the world and stuff like that. Like it. So just to bring it all together, like each power dynamic obviously was more depressing in a way. Like by the time we get to Allison, we just see like they're in this world and there's just certain rules, and your whole life is confined by those rules, and it'll like there's no reprieve from it. Like Viserys dies, they're probably gonna try to marry her off to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So like this is just what her life is. She's smart enough to understand that this is what it's going to be, but she can't even though she's kind of dedicated her life to duty, she can't get away from like the dread. And so yeah, that was the worst sex scene of probably in all Thrones history. That worst semi-consensual sexual experience that I've seen on there, but it was just depressing for me.
And what I want to say to that is the fact that this episode was directed by a woman, and for her, because I don't know if y'all watched the kind of behind or
inside the episode.
Inside the episode, thank you. Where the director said that pretty much everything that she has based intimate scenes from other movies are told from the perspective of a male director. So for her, of course, it was important to show that perspective from the woman. And I think, and this is why it hurts me so much with Allison, is the fact that when you don't really have a choice, or you feel that obligation because you're married, never mind duty, okay? It's when, this is probably true for a lot of people, women in particular, is that it's that whole patriarchy thing that we keep talking about, and the fact that she's just kind of there. She's the vessel. Her battlefield is to bear children and nothing more. It doesn't matter if she likes it or wants to do it herself. This is the expectation, and you don't really get to tell me no. And for her to just kind of have to look up at the ceiling and, just kind of be used as a tool, it really truly broke my heart. And I think it was so great that that perspective was shown in this episode, because sex isn't always that great, depending on your circumstances, of course. And in her circumstance, it definitely is terrible. She is imprisoned, and she's to squeeze out heirs, just like Rhaenyra said. And I like that symbolism, Tristan, what you said about the window when she's holding the baby, how it looks like a cage. I think that symbolism was right on point.
And I mean, to add to that, like while she's staring up at the ceiling, while this, sword out old man is just on top of her, like just staring at rats, like you would in a prison cell, right? So there's more symbolism.
And Allison is in that position solely because her father is the hand of the king, or I guess he was the hand of the king, because at the end of the episode, he's no longer the hand of the king. And I got to say, like, I didn't expect that to happen this fast in the story. George, what are your thoughts on the whole Otto Hightower out as hand of the king? Because he had people spying on Rhaenyra. That information came back to him. He went to Viserys and told him, "Hey, your daughter's, out on the town, and she's was seen with her uncle, and we think they were hooking up or whatever." And then that kind of blew up in his face.
Yeah, it's like he has all these informants or whatever. It reminded me of God damn, I haven't seen Game of Thrones so far.
Littlefinger.
No, the other one.
Varys. Yeah.
Having his little birds or whatever the fuck. But that's what it reminded me of. But it's cool to see Rhaenyra like talk to her dad and tell her like, "Look, I'll marry the king, but you got to get rid of this guy." And he listened to her because he was putting stuff in her head. He basically pimped out his daughter, and he found out about it, and he didn't realize it because he said like he was mourning and she was just good accompanying. But now he sees like the bigger picture of what he was doing. And
after 5 fucking years, though.
Yeah, it took him way too long.
Golly, bro.
but hey, he did it. So now he's out. But I feel like some shit's gonna get worse.
Yeah,
for sure.
A lot of great scenes in people discovering this information or refuting this information. We have another great scene with Renera and Allison, and Allison's basically confronting her like, "Hey, like I heard this. My father told your dad this," and then you see Renera, say, "Hey, it's not true. It's these are false allegations or whatever." Well, I mean, technically, she didn't lie, right? Like
that's exactly what I thought, George. I thought, okay,
she's
there we go. She's omitting the truth of it, right? Because she concocted this story of, I wanted to go, but Daemon being my escort, he wanted to stay. And what could I do? He was my escort. And like, Okay, he didn't deflower her. He did not do that.
The
That
other
was
guy did.
Sir Kristen Cole
Cole.
deflower her. However, any admission of even the slightest of those allegations being true would totally just ruin everything, of course. And Hightower would still have the upper hand and would probably still be hand of the king at this point. So there's moves and there's counter moves. And I think everything is very calculated. Rhaenyra, in my opinion, definitely has the working mind of a ruler. Whether or not that's going to really pan out remains to be seen. However, the fact that she had a CYA in order to advance her own game to get Hightower out, hopefully it does not turn around and come back and bite her in the ass, but we'll see.
I think also too, what shows as a classic example of Rhaenyra's immaturity and just not being ready for the throne, if shit hits the fan and sometimes to Viserys, is how she treated the whole Christian Cole thing. Like Christian Cole could lose his head if they would have gotten caught. And if somebody of a mature mindset will understand the ramifications of her actions, she wouldn't even put Christian Cole in that position in the first place to get potentially caught and killed for it. So it shows you the green mindset of Renera, thinking that she's ready when she's really not.
Yeah, exactly. So I mentioned before that Otto Hightower is out. Viserys says, I can't trust you anymore. Removes the pen from his shirt. And I guess my question to everyone is, what's next for Otto, and who's going to be the new hand? Now, Frank and Tristan, y'all might actually know the answers, but if y'all could kind of speak around the answer.
I'll
Brittany,
say that I think everybody in here can like guess. Like,
well, I have some.
There's only one good option.
Is it going to be that one guy that gives some advice every in the episode 3?
I'll say he's the best candidate.
Okay.
He's the only candidate.
Yeah, that's the only one they've actually introduced that actually talks and gives them reasonable advice. So I'd assume it'd be that guy.
What about Lord Corlys Williamson? He could be. Whenever I see that name, I always think about Corlys Williamson. That's all the other Corlys I've ever.
That is funny.
Shout out to the man, pun intended.
Right. No, I'm serious. Wouldn't that be a good political move? I mean, obviously, they're gonna join houses in another way. We find out, but nobody.
I mean, that's having a lot of power. If he were to give it to Corlys, the sea snake, I think that would be a huge mistake. That's giving way too much power to one family, especially when you're going to have your only daughter. Well, no, your eldest daughter marry into the Velaryon family to strengthen their union and what have you. No, that would not be smart.
I mean, more power than the hand of the king, who also is the leader of Old Town. His grandson is the potential heir to the throne. I mean, I don't see what's the difference as far as option between Otto and
it's a lateral move. I mean, honestly, it's a lateral move.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, T.
House Velaryon is also an open contempt of the crown. That's not the energy you want. At least Otto is doubly working for the crown and for his own interests, right? About Otto, I mean, I'm not going to talk about what happens to Otto. But I think it's important to know that traditionally with Hands of the King, it either ends with them getting their head cut off, a la Ned Stark, a la one Baratheon Hand of the King to Jaehaerys back in the day, or either getting sent to the wall. It's not a position that ends with retirement and benefits. It's just not. It's not. The best Otto Hightower can hope for is a nice trip back to Old Town, but I don't think he wants to sit underneath his older brother in Old Town. He technically could stay in King's Landing as the royal father of the queen.
Right.
He could do that and just kind of lay low, but we'll see.
Yeah, my prediction is that he's not long for this world, based on the look ahead to the next episode or the next few episodes, I guess. I don't know. George, what do you think about the Otto Hightower situation?
I kind of spoke on it already, but I'd like to see him get sent to the wall or beheaded. One of those two. What Tristan said sounds pretty exciting.
There's something wrong with you, George.
Either one.
Hang them from the Red Keep's walls and have their innards, just out for everyone to see. And
Otto Hightower lived a long life, man. He served 3 kings.
yes, he did.
His daughter is the queen. He has, his son, for all intents and purposes, will be a king. Like he got everything he wanted.
Yeah.
It just won't, it may not end well for him. But shit, man.
You said
society. I think Otto
his son's gonna be a king.
Is like 50.
Grandson.
Oh, his grandson's gonna be a king.
Aegon, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, what was really interesting during that exchange between Viserys and Otto was the story about Balon. That's Viserys' father. When his brother died, Aemon. And then Balon was named as Hand of the King. 5 days. That's all he had. 5 days to Hand of the King. And then Balon mysteriously died. And then Otto Hightower was named Hand of the King to Jaehaerys first.
Interesting.
So, again, there's calculated moves and everything. Hightower wants it all, and this is where early on I had said he's basically the Littlefinger of this series, and it's apparent now more than ever. So go ahead.
What's funny is that before he goes into Viserys's chambers to tell him the gossip or the information, you could see him kind of the wheels spinning in his head, like, is this the right move? Is this the right move? Right. And at the end, after he gets fired, you can see the look on his face like, this wasn't the right move.
No, certainly was not. And let me pose this to y'all, because when Otto Hightower is called down to be informed about Rhaenyra's sightings in King's Landing, it's a young boy who comes through the gates as the informant. That same young boy comes to Mysaria, where she's holding Daemon, or that's just where Daemon decides to crash for the night. It's kind of like Seaside Cave or whatever. And the boy pays Mysaria. So I'm assuming, and I think I did hear it in the book, because I'm also listening to the audiobook, that Mysaria is referred to as the White Worm. Now, all
also,
of this...
Lady Misery also.
Lady Misery, thank you, yes. So all of this further makes me believe that Daemon did all of this to Rhaenyra to get to Viserys, so that he could, have a better claim, even regardless of there being a 3-year-old prince. But the fact that now Mysaria is in on this and being an informant and getting paid for it instead of selling her body like she used to. So is she going to have a bigger role in all of this in the future as well, I wonder?
I think she kind of hinted towards it in episode 2 when Daemon takes the egg and he's in Dragonstone, Otto and the crew come and confront him, and she gets upset that Daemon kind of threw out for the wolves, and she tells Daemon, like, you left me out in the open, like I'm a whore, like I can get murdered for this, like you didn't protect me. And she kind of hints towards like wanting more for herself, being a whore from Island of Lys and coming to the Seven Kingdoms. She wants a safer, more prominent route for herself and for her future. So I think it's laying the groundwork for her to like not be Baelish, but like find ways to like be more calculated with her moves.
Yeah, and in the years since her and Daemon kind of went their separate ways, it looks like she's like a business owner now. So good on her.
It's kind of like when Frank's favorite character from Game of Thrones kind of leads Baelish's pleasure house. You know, she kind of becomes in charge and calls shots. Shout out to Ross. We miss Ross. I know Frank does. Breaks his heart every time.
Big time.
Great character. A lot of coupling with her in the first series. So I love that term coupling. I like how Viserys is like, you know, what Otto's like trying to like rat out his daughter, and he's like, just say it plainly. What happened?
It's like they were fucking. Like, what don't you get? Like, why say coupling? We say the term fucking in Game of Thrones. Like, it's okay.
Well, you have to realize this too. Like, if he misspeaks even an inch or the wrong word, he could lose his head. So he's trying to be respectful, but at the same time, speak plainly and truthfully without potentially, you know, losing his head too. So, because I mean, that's his daughter. That's still his daughter at the end of the day. You don't want to speak too recklessly.
Right.
That's fair. So Patrice, shout out to Patrice in the chat. Appreciate you being here. Questions: why did Daemon reject Rhaenyra? Is Daemon really impotent, or was he feeling guilty about seducing his niece? I personally think it's because of the fact that the shock didn't have quite the effect that I think he wanted. When he saw that she was into it, he no longer had the upper hand and was like, okay, well, this isn't fun anymore. You're into this. Like, I'm going to go because you're into this. Like, bye.
I agree with that. I think with Daemon, we have to realize he's always playing two games at once. I think Daemon is legitimately a solid dude. Like, I'm trying to figure out where he falls on the scale. Like, he's solid, you know, he's a solid guy who also has ulterior motives, is motivated by, you know, being a second son who has to, what did he say about Otto Hightower? Second son who claims everything. Like, you know, he's working for everything that, you know, is not in his birthright. So he's playing like these childish games. He needs his brother's attention. He wants to build his legend around the realm. But he doesn't really have too much of before, you know, the stepstones. He didn't really have the vehicle to really do that, right? So I think part of him legitimately wants to show Rhaenyra like this other world, right? Like, or also to show how big shit he is in this other world and how many other these different things that you can do, these different pleasures and freedoms and stuff like that. But he also wants to improve his station at the same time. So it's like it's always these competing interests with him. So he's never all the way bad or all the way good, right? Like he can say the right thing at Emma's funeral, right? He can, you know, travel around the world and come back with this precious gift for Rhaenyra, like, but we always have to have those ulterior motives in the back of his head. Like, we can't forget those things.
Yeah, and we see that in the his confrontation with Viserys. When Viserys, you know, basically has him like dragged back to the castle, to the throne room. You see Viserys pull out a knife or a small sword and, like, you know, put it to Daemon's throat. And like, Daemon does not look bothered at all. Like, he knows his brother's not going to kill him, not going to hurt him. And then he's like, you know what, you know, you've ruined Renera, and he's like, wed her to me. Like, he just like, just, even though he's flat on his back, it seems like he has all the bargaining power. He's not in fear of his brother the slightest. I thought that was a really strong scene for Matt Smith.
So I have a question. So when all that stuff happens in that room, like, Daemon still lies to him though, because he says they had sex, right? But
he doesn't really answer. It's like he never. It's just like with the quote from the first episode about the, like,
he didn't deny it.
Right.
But it seemed more like on this time when he did say something, like it seemed like he was like, yeah, I did it, but he didn't. And then later on, we see the maester come in and give her a tea. Was that so she can like have an abortion or something?
Medieval plan B, y'all.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
The morning after tea. Yep.
Morning after tea.
Plan B tea.
Plan
T.
T.
That's what it is.
Plan T. There we go.
But I also do think with the moon tea, I think the maester and Otto probably spoke, not conspire per se, but like don't want any potential rivals to Otto's grandson's not throne, but because I mean Rhaenyra is the heir, but potential confusion for succession.
But I think more so too, it was because did the Maester work with Hightower, or was it by request of Viserys? Because
I took it as Viserys is doing.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
That's what the Maester said.
Yeah,
right.
That's what the Maester said, and that was a result of that conversation.
Right.
Pretty much accepting what she did, and it's like, okay, now let's deal with these consequences or potential consequences.
Right. And going back to George's question about, Daemon having quote unquote admitted to Viserys that he took Rhaenyra's maidenhood, as they call it, or maidenhead, why he didn't say otherwise. I think it's just because he likes to get a rise out of his brother. He likes to get underneath his skin and piss him off whenever he can. That what little victories Daemon can get at the expense of Viserys, he's going to do it. No different than with the questioning of, did you refer to my son as the heir for a day? I think in that sense, he really did do it, and he couldn't deny it. And also at this point, it's like, well, it doesn't matter what Daemon says or doesn't say. Viserys already has an opinion about Daemon based on what other people say, and that's what he's going to believe. He's going to believe other people over his own brother.
Even over his daughter? Because, did he even talk to her about this?
No, at that point, they hadn't spoken until Rhaenyra was called into his chambers, and she looked at the cat's paw, and that's when they had that conversation saying, you haven't even heard my side of the story. You haven't come to me at all to say anything. So again, Viserys already has an opinion. It doesn't matter what anyone says. It doesn't matter what the people who were directly involved had to say.
Yeah.
Someone else came to him and told him first, and that's it.
So she got the tea after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I may interject,
Absolutely.
as a father of a 17-year-old girl.
Oh my. God bless you, sir.
I empathize with Viserys because we already nobody scouts children better than their own parents. Like, we know our children, we know what they're capable of, we know what their fatal flaws are and stuff like that. He didn't need to speak with Rhaenyra. It's like he knew. He absolutely knew. He knows that he like I said, she's a dragon. She's driven by desire, just by definition as a Targaryen. And then Rhaenyra herself, her being a contrarian. Like, think of all the things he said about her, right? Stubborn, contrarian, narcissist. Like, all of these things fit in with what she did. Like, impulsive. All of those things fit. So it would have to be something completely out of character for him to have to divert and then talk to her and get this side of the story and, kind of deliberate back and forth. He knows. He may not know like the deep details. Like, he may believe her that they didn't actually have sex, but he knows, one, that she did something that someone in her station is not supposed to do in that particular world. And also, he was completely right that it doesn't matter if she did or not. Who cares? Like, the perception in that world, she just watched the fucking play, which was all about the perception of her as a potential ruler, or the perception of Viserys for making the choice to name her as an heir. Like, she should understand, or she should begin to start understanding, which is what Viserys is trying to teach her in his own super passive way. Like, he would be a horrible mentor. Good God. But you have to actually apply these lessons to her. But he's telling her perception as a ruler, perception matters, right? It always matters. It's always mattered, and it's always going to matter. So, no, as a father, I was right there like, hey, I wouldn't even give her the chance. I try not to give my daughter the chance to lie to me, because as a 17-year-old, by definition, that's kind of where a lot of them default, especially something as high stakes as, the behavior that she engaged in with Daemon. So there's been few times where I'm like completely on board with Viserys. I was completely on board with him towards the end of that episode. His application still needs work, right? If you're grooming her to be a ruler, it can't be like these little 5-minute conversations. Like, first episode, he tells her about the dream, right? Aegon the Conqueror, the dream, Song of Ice and Fire. The next day, you should have been showing her the dagger, and like, hey, let's continue. Let's follow up on that lesson, that conversation that we had.
Instead, 5 years later, after you did a fuck up,
yeah,
and fucked. Now we have to continue this conversation. I agree, and the fact that Viserys even told Alicent when they were discussing, who's telling the truth and who isn't. Alicent comes to Rhaenyra's defense and says it's not in her nature to be deceitful. However, I cannot say the same for your brother. But Viserys comes back and says they're the blood of the dragon, and it's kind of within the Targaryen nature at times to be reckless and what have you. Good Lord. All of Jaehaerys' kids were also different. Unfortunately, a lot of them died. But Sarah, fuck that bitch. Okay? I told Frank about that earlier. I was getting PTSD about a former family member of mine. I couldn't have it. Okay. But I felt there's definite similarities from generation to generation. The being deceitful, being that calculated and just wreaking havoc is something within their very nature. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we do not encourage incest, because you don't know what it breeds.
But that's the only reason. Otherwise, it's fine. It's totally cool. I think this episode was a real learning experience for Allison and Rhaenyra. You kind of can see them. They're both now like 18, 19 or whatever, and they're both kind of seeing what the world is and what this, especially like the Game of Thrones world is like, and they're learning tough lessons, the hard way. So pretty good episode. I have a hard time saying it's my favorite because like the next one will be my favorite. It's like almost like The Boys with me, where I feel like all these episodes are so good I can't really pick out which one's my favorite. There's like moments I won't forget, and like really cool scenes and stuff, but like it's hard to pick which one's my favorite episode. But this is a really good episode. And let's look ahead to next episode, because this looks like this could be the best of the 5. Because it looks like it's mid-season. It's probably going to be the last time we see the younger actresses play Allison and Rhaenyra. And I got to say, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. What do y'all think about this likely being their last episode? I'll go to Frank first.
I mean, y'all know my concern originally when the show started about the big time jump and bringing in new actresses. I'm not going to question it anymore. Only because so far they've done a great job. I'm sure the new actresses that they're going to come in and play Allison and Renera are going to do a great job or even better job. One thing about Game of Thrones in this world, I've never had issues with the casting. I've never had issues with the acting. It's always been A1. So I was very apprehensive at first with this big time jump that we're going to have. But again, man, they're batting 1,000. I mean, they've hit all levels, man. And I mean, I'm almost excited to see what these new crop of actresses are going to bring to the table.
I know for me, when I first read Fire and Blood, there was so much history that I remember. Like it felt like a time jump. Brittany, this now reading it, but like you'll turn like every 10 or so pages, like it'll jump 5-10 years. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I'm used to it. Like the Dance of the Dragons is not a 5-year thing. Like this is a course of some decades. Like so much stuff changes like in within that world, whatever. So I watched it on my iPad. I downloaded it. So the behind the next week's trailer wasn't on there. So I haven't even watched it yet. So I'm excited. As soon as we log off, I'm going to watch it.
Me neither. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. So I'm and I like it. I like it this way. So I'm excited.
Well, just to kind of spoil it for you a little bit, I'll run through it real quickly. So as we learned in the end of this episode, Rhaenyra is now betrothed to Rhaenyra, Rhaenyra Velaryon, her cousin. So it looks like we're getting into a royal wedding in the next episode, and it looks like Viserys is traveling or having the Velaryons travel to him to propose this marriage between their kids, and Viserys has a great quote where he says, "I hope to herald in the second age of dragons." And you see dragons soaring through the air, and they're combining these two powerful houses in this marriage. And then it looks like there's a big fight at the ceremony. Or what did you think about that, Brittany? You've seen the look ahead, right?
I did watch the look ahead, and yes, Drew, I agree with you. Bring on episode 5. I'm ready for it. It did look like there was something unfolding at either the wedding ceremony itself or prior to, because it looked like the Lannisters were coming in, and they were coming in hot. Okay, Jason,
Kristen Cole, the Lannisters, and Lena are definitely involved in the fight.
Exactly, and it looked like Jason. He comes in all pissed off because he wanted to marry the princess, and she's like, "Fuck no." And he probably didn't take too kindly to that because you're offending the Golden Lion. And it looks like a lot of shit is going to unfold at this ceremony. Now, I am not to that point in the book, so I don't know what to expect when it comes to this marriage. And I don't know if this is actually like created for the show or if this is something that they have picked up from the books and we're going to see it on screen. But either way, there's going to be action and it's going to be intense. And I think, Justin, you're right to say that this next episode will probably be everyone's favorite episode.
Yeah, I mean, it truly looks like a mid-season finale and almost like a kind of a clearing of the house or something, because it looks like Viserys, in one scene they show him, he looks like he's in real bad shape. And I would not be surprised if this is his last episode also. Although that's crazy to say because Paddy Considine has been so awesome so far. And I mean, just like the young actresses that have played Renera and Allison, like it seems crazy we're going to lose those people from this show pretty soon, but that's what it looks like is going to happen. And you have Otto telling Allison, like the final quote of the trailer, he says, "The king will die, and if Rhaenyra succeeds him, war will follow. Prepare Aegon to rule." And then she can tell she's like crying, and then that might be where Otto gets the axe too. I don't know. George, did you watch the trailer? Look ahead.
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, definitely check it out because looks like good stuff's on the way.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. And Drew's saying maybe it's a red wedding look feel of it. We're just gonna have to wait and see. I'm excited.
Yeah, it looks like it's like a big maybe not a wedding, but maybe like the after party kind of deal, because you don't see the queen or you don't see Rhaenyra anywhere in that scene. So
no, she's in it. She looks like she's getting trampled at some point. Almost.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah, it's a really quick scene. Frank, George, and Tristan, when y'all watch it, we're gonna have to chat about it offline. That way we get your thoughts. I know we do need to wrap it up here because some of us do need to head out. But Justin, was there anything else that we wanted to touch on real fast?
Well, our YouTube channel got has some news this week. Why don't you let us know?
Very exciting news, y'all. We did it. The road to 100 has been reached. On behalf of the Watchers, everyone from the Watchers in the Basement, we want to thank everyone who's followed us from day one to most recent. We hit 100 YouTube subscribers, and now we have a new custom URL, and it's youtube.com/The Watchers in the Basement. So thank y'all for making that happen.
Very cool. Very cool. And I guess that's it. Any final thoughts from y'all about the episode or what's ahead?
I'm ready.
We're about to get into the great games now, man. Like, if you thought this shit was good, shit's about to get real good. Real good. Like, oh, God, real good. Spicy, real good.
I'm looking forward to it. Frank, any final words?
Win the great game now, man. Let's get it.
Sounds good. Hey, Brittany, how can people find us on social media?
Simply follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can search The Watchers in the Basement or use @WatchersBasement. Let's continue growing our YouTube channel. Let's make it 200 subscribers. Let's make that our next goal. So you can do that by hashtagging Watchers Basement everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, like this video. It really helps out our channel, helps others learn about us, and hopefully tune in, chat with us. We appreciate everyone who's been here. Amber, Drew, Patrice, Daryl. I think that's everyone that I've seen in the chat. Appreciate you being here. And last but not least, we are also on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, thanks to anchor.fm. That's for those who are not into video podcasts. We got you covered. So give us a 5-star rating. Again, it helps out our channel. And back to you, Justin.
Thanks, Brittany. Appreciate it. And so for Brittany, for George, for Frank, and for Tristan, this is Justin saying we'll see you next week when we talk about episode 5 of House of the Dragon. See you later.
A watcher always pays his debts.